Okay, I'm here with Janet Smith, the director of the orchestra at ISB, the International School of Brussels. And I had the great pleasure of teaching both of Janet's children, a few years ago now. Janet, thank you so much for joining me from Brussels today.
My pleasure.
It feels like we're in the same room, almost.
Close enough, or closer than before.
Closer than before. We've been having a little chat and reconnecting after many years. As I mentioned, I taught both of Janet's children, and they've gone on to become really bright young sparks as they emerge in their early careers. They're post high school studies and making their way out in the world. Janet and I had a great connection when we worked in Brussels together. A love of music, of food, of laughter, and lots of other things. It was a very special time in my life, and it's really been lovely for you to come and join me today. And I chose you intentionally because I see you as someone who has such a passion for all the good things in life, and bringing them to all the people that you work with through your vision as a director in the orchestra, as a musician, and encouraging music in every student's life that you touch. So Janet, I've got a couple of questions for you, and the first one is, why did you choose teaching as a career? How did you get into teaching in the first place?
Before I answer that, I have to add on, I don't just teach orchestra, but I also teach their 3 and 4-year-olds. So now they call it preschool and pre-K. It used to be nursery class and pre-K. And I want to make sure to put that in because it is so terribly important to me. So anyway.
Thank you.
Why did I become a teacher and how? I can actually pinpoint the exact moment it occurred to me to become a teacher. I grew up in Hays, Kansas, so in a university town, luckily enough, and I was in the 8th grade, and I was in the orchestra class at Felton Middle School. And my teacher, Mrs. Dolezal, was conducting. And I remember watching her and thinking, I could do that. And realizing that I could see myself doing that. And then she was such a wonderful teacher. She stretched me by actually asking me to take a piece of music home, an arrangement for orchestra. And I got to rehearse the whole class, and I got to conduct it on the concert. And so she didn't know that I said to myself, I can do that. But she somehow had the wisdom to encourage me by doing that. And that was it. I knew I was going to teach after that. Simple as that. And it was very lucky that I knew that because, of course, once you have a direction, it shapes everything you do. And I knew I wanted to play violin, continue, and I was playing piano, etc. But knowing that I was going in the direction of education did lend a color to everything that I did after that. And it was very natural. My mother actually was a teacher, although not a teacher of anything specifically, but she taught us all the time. That was her mission in life.
So. I love that. I love that because I can relate in some ways because I didn't really think about it until fairly recently, but I just remember clearly teaching my dolls and teddies and having them all lined up. And you think that, most kids go through that phase, but I never really stopped. I just don't have the teddies anymore. So
you have Sandy.
Yeah, I do. I love that story. Did you ever keep in touch with that particular teacher that inspired you so?
Oh, yes. In fact, just last summer, the summer of 2019, I finally got back, took my kids back to the States and introduced them to a lot of family, and was back in my hometown. And she was one of the people I looked up. Absolutely. I borrowed her violin when I played for my mother's funeral in 2010. And so, yeah, huge influence.
That's so beautiful. I love that. Um, in terms of your, now we had a discussion a little earlier today. We talked about being having a long-standing career in the one place. You've been at ISB for, did you say 24 years now? And I'm sure there's been many highs and lows. Are there any particular challenges about teaching that you think is important for people listening? Are there, of course, there will have been highs and lows and challenges along the way, but are there any one that stands out that you've overcome and you've been quite proud of?
I think the amount of administrative work and how it changes. Educators know that there's something new every year, something comes down the pike. Some of them are very good changes, some of them should be changed, and sometimes administrators make changes just to justify themselves or justify the amount of money they charge parents for whatever reason. But the longer I teach, the more I detest the paperwork. Rarely do I find that it helps inform my teaching. Sometimes. I don't particularly enjoy writing grade cards, but it does provide a chance to sit down and think about each child. So I've come to accept that's a good evil. But I think overcoming the drudgery of that, and realizing it's just what it is, and then setting it to the side. It used to really get to me. And now I've hopefully with 24 years, there's a little bit of wisdom.
I could have been a bit more gentle. I could have said 2 decades.
Well, I'm just loud. I was going to say 24 years, and yet, I'm only 40. That's really just, no, I think it's compartmentalizing those kinds of things that you cannot do anything about. And then you don't feel that loss of control of what you're doing. You accept it, you put it where it is, and you do your best to do it efficiently. You figure out how much it needs of your life and your time. And I think I have gotten wiser about that. Everything doesn't have to be done to the nth degree.
Yep. Yeah, that's a big one. It's a big one, isn't it? And then you can really get back to embracing it, and then you have more energy for the things that you do love, and which is just the hands-on teaching. That's the whole gig, right? That's what we signed up for.
Yeah, that's what we signed up for. In fact, when I came to ISB, I was hired as the head of the music department because that's how the job was a full-time job. There aren't many orchestra jobs in international schools in Europe. There are many more in Asia, but not in the international school system. And then the following year, because I worked my tail off and did so well, they added on the theater, the drama part, which makes sense as a whole. But very lucky, I got married and I had a baby, and I just said, I'm done. I didn't enjoy the administrative part at all, and it took away from my teaching. It was so clear to me. And I was lucky enough to be able to remold my job description. And I've never wanted to do any kind of administration since then.
I hear you. I hear you. Can I take you back a little bit on the first years of your teaching journey, and if you could think about it, I mean, you could think of another time if it was more appropriate, but when you think back to either yourself or younger teachers that you know in the start of their careers, is there any sort of support that you wish you had, or you wish you saw other teachers having when they're first getting started?
There's something that actually now ISB has, and I wish they'd had it. It's a mentor program. I'm not quite sure what they do in it. So what I could have benefited was from somebody being in my classroom and scripting things such as how much time I'm using on getting going, how much time I'm talking versus the amount of time the students are playing, how many times I am repeating myself, things like that. And they may do that in our mentor program. I'm not familiar with it, of course, being a lifer. um, but and in a completely non-judgmental. I I see teachers come in that struggle and I don't know exactly how they're being helped, because if it's an administrator coming in that sees them struggling and does whatever it is they do to try to help them, I can imagine that must be incredibly pressurized and just scary for them. And I'm not sure that's the best environment for someone to grow and become more competent. And so it seems to me that somebody completely removed from administration, especially if they could have it, even if they weren't struggling, that could be one of the best investments a school makes.
Yeah.
However, if you have people coming in and out every 2 years, that's very costly. So I can understand if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about, isn't it? Because that move from your qualifications and your training as an undergraduate, and then all of a sudden you're out there and you're on, and there's a lot of expectation from the families, from your faculty and your administrators as well. But it sounds like something amazing, and that was one of the things I loved about working at in a progressive environment like ISB. They are open to thinking and researching and trialing to see everything they can do to make it, the best start for the students and the teachers at the same time. So now we'll change the tone a little bit to a bit lighter. I'm sure you have plenty, but what would be one of your funniest and most memorable experiences in your teaching career, do you think?
I don't necessarily have a big situation, but one that I still laugh about actually just happened last year. It was in the youngest class, in a nursery class, and as teachers do all over, they have the picture of the teacher with what they do underneath, and of course you have a timeline for the day, and so you have the toilet for you're going to the toilet, and the book for reading and all. So then here's a picture of Janet and Miss Smith for music, and the lady, the teacher, asked me if we could take a picture and put there. I said, okay, but for several years you've had this very nice picture of me. And I don't understand. And no, we'd like to have a picture of you. So she took a picture, and I finally got out of her why she wanted this new picture of me. Because the kids didn't recognize me as Miss Smith.
Oh!
We laughed and laughed. So she got this picture, and the next week she had it up, but she had the old picture up. So I said to the kids, "This is Miss Smith." And they said, "No, it's not." I said, "But it's me. I was just a little younger." That doesn't look like you at all, Miss Smith.
Wow.
Okay, maybe it's not funny, but I think it was a reality check, and I have to laugh because
I find that amusing. I had a birthday a few weeks ago, and my 4 and 5-year-olds are just all day long, they're scratching their head going, how is it your birthday? Like, you're a teacher, you're an adult, like how do you get a birthday? And you haven't got a mum and a dad. What? I was just thinking when you told that story, it's like getting slapped in the face with a wet fish. It's like, that doesn't look like you. That's a no filter moment, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Of being at the grocery store, you remember the grocery store close to school, and you go there and the kids look at you and their eyes just get bigger and bigger, and their parents barely know who I am because they don't see me at pickup, or and the kids first one's like, "Oh, Miss Smith," and they run to you, and the parents are looking at you, and then they say, "Well, why are you here? You live at the ECC, the Early Childhood Center."
So what actually happened with the photo? Does the teacher use the older photo or the newer one?
Well, okay, this is funny because 3 days ago I was in her classroom and I noticed she had both. And I said, "Are you keeping the old one just to make me feel better?" No, I just haven't taken it down.
Oh.
I'm going to ask for it back. So I have a memory of when I looked like.
No, I think that's genius. If you want a career in keeping things real, work with children.
No kidding. Absolutely.
That's part of the joy, and that's why it's really important. I wanted to one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because it's about sharing with other people. I think the more that we share these elements of what we do, we come back to finding the joy of it all. And it's been very easy to be overwhelmed with all the things that we find challenging, plus the year we've all had. It's
Yeah,
important to go and
for
find
sure.
those little nuggets and say, wow, what I do is really amazing. And I really feel that teaching's a vocation, it's not a career. So I love that. I love that. Um, Janet, thank you. I've got one final question for you, and it is, what do you think your best advice is for a teacher? You can pick whichever stage of the career you would direct the advice to.
You know, it's the old adage, keep your eyes on the prize, keep your eye on the goal. And even in these times, I think for everyone, it could be easily one of your most difficult years. And I think that the remembering while you're there and taking pleasure, consciously taking pleasure in those little moments, because the rest of the day may be just junk. You know, we're wearing a mask, it's sweaty, it's itchy, we can't touch children, and just is so difficult. And yet they say something, and yeah, I think I laugh harder this year because I appreciate it. Part of it is during lockdown, I was trying to teach orchestra by Zoom. It's just, we'll look back at it 10 years and just shake our heads and think, did they get anything out of it? You know, there are things that you can do, but it's just nothing like really teaching. And so everyone, you know, they commiserate, oh, it must be so difficult. And I say, we are in person, and we're lucky enough that my school is. And, you know, I don't care if they ask me to come and teach at midnight, so I have just these kids, I'll do it because I get to see the kids in person. Um, I think my answer might have been a little bit different a year ago. There's a saying that my mother put in one of her little armoires, or little, what you call it anyway, just a saying to live by. And it sums up perfectly, because as I mentioned in the beginning, she was a born teacher, and she taught us. And it said, in 100 years, it will not matter what house you lived in, what car you drove, what clothes you wore, but what will matter is the difference that you made in the life of a child. And I can barely say it and keep my voice calm, because it's so meaningful for me. It's everything. That's why I teach. And the other saying that I've kept with me even longer, I was in history class in high school in 1986 when the Challenger shuttle exploded. And I just remember so clearly, Mr. Jenkins stopped the class, and they now announced the explosion. And I had been following it because they had the first teacher on board. Her name was Krista McAuliffe. And she had this saying, and I rarely remember these things, but she said, I teach, I touch the future. And it's all you need to justify why we should be supporting education, why we should be teaching, why the best people should be teaching, it had more meaning as I got older. It had even more meaning when I became a parent, because I realized those teachers were everything in what happened to my kids. That's why you were so amazing for us, because what my kids got from you at the age of 3 and 4 years old, yeah, as we were just talking earlier, I said, I think you started my son on his science trajectory. I really do. And it's everything. It really, you don't know what you're doing right now that will influence later.
Mhm.
And what you did for my kids may be this much, but it was just at the right time and in the right way. And all those small things add up. And if you took any away, it would be different. And so while we might not be the number one influence, we are. And I know it also because kids come back and they talk to you about, they come back and they want to talk to the teachers that they remember. And
Yeah.
you hear from them that you were an influence, even though you were just trying to get through the day. You're trying to be standing at the end of the day. It's a very romanticized version, but I think it's the crux of everything.
I love that. I'm gonna remember that. I teach. Which way was it? I teach. I
I
touch the
teach,
future.
I touch the future.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful doesn't even begin to describe it, but
Yeah,
it's
it
beautiful.
perfectly encapsulates
Yeah.
everything.
Oh, thank you for saying those wonderful things about me. I've told you many times that truly your children absolute joy, and the environment they were in, it allowed me to grow my wings as a teacher, because there was a lot of freedom to explore. I've been very fortunate. The couple of years I spent at ISB continued to shape me. So it was the teachers, including yourself, around me that helped me become that teacher I was to your children, and hopefully the many others that I taught in that time. So, Janet,
When I
thank
look when I
you.
look back on that time when you were there, and sometimes usually the assistant was supposed to come in with the music class just because you needed the time to do other things, but once in a while you would come in, and I remember the enjoyment as a teacher, how we laughed, we enjoyed, we basically just played music, and we,
Yes.
not that we had instruments, but it was playtime but with music, and it was so easy to do that, and I had such enjoyment from
Oh,
working with you as a teacher. Yeah.
thank you. You know what I remember? I don't know if you do, but I I didn't have you buying CDs was still the way you got music at that time, and to live in a foreign country for the first time, I've diversified my music taste, but certainly at the start, you went to the go-tos, and I remember having Nora Jones playing on the CD player, because you came in one day when the children were relaxing and you said, Nora Jones, are you like the coolest teacher ever for your relaxation music? Because it was just, well, an artist we both clearly appreciated, but it had a different vibe, because I think sometimes those situations, it might be not thought about so well, but it's again evidence of when you bring yourself and you bring your personality into the classroom, you don't know what you're inspiring in the children or the other people around you. So I don't know if you remember the Nora Jones conversation, but I always do. When I play that, I still think of you.
Thank you.
It's
Oh
so funny, the little
gosh.
things that you remember, but it's a passion for music, and I think it's also that your willingness to open up to learn from other teachers. There's so much. We've become certainly in that environment, we became each other's family, and your friendships. It was quite normal to go and socialize with people on the weekends and things, because this was
Yeah.
your European family, and it was a big faculty, so one of the biggest I've been a part of. So yeah. Good memories, Janet. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Well, it's been so lovely to talk to you and catch up.